Okay, so this is the video for Module 3, and this is the first video of what will be 3 videos. In this module, we're going to talk about data cleaning. These are the learning objectives for the module. There's 7 of them, and this will be split into 3-part videos. And this first part is going to cover the first 2 learning objectives, which is to define data cleaning and its purpose, and to develop strategies for identifying and addressing inconsistencies in data, including typos and formatting issues. Remember, the structure and paradigm for this course is to study primarily cleaning, modifying, and restructuring data. So Module 3 is the cleaning, Module 4 is the modifying, and Module 5 is the restructuring. Okay. Learning outcome 3.1 is defining data cleaning. Data cleaning is the process of fixing issues with the data column by column. In other words, we're just working within one variable, and we're essentially looking at any issues that might be in there that would prevent us from effectively analyzing our data. There are a lot of things that can happen that can affect being able to analyze the data. Something sort of simple would be like just basic spelling errors or capitalization inconsistencies. As a reminder, always save your original unclean data just in case you have to go back to it. It happens all the time. Maybe you have a little mishap here and there. And if you haven't saved your original data, then you could be in trouble. So I came up also with this pillars of clean data, which is basically what I consider the 6 characteristics of clean data. And that is going to be consistency, accuracy, validity, uniqueness, completion, and relevance. So this module is divvied up, and the learning objectives match along with these different aspects of clean data. Okay. So the first aspect to look at is the aspect of consistency. And so learning outcome 3.2 is to develop strategies for identifying and addressing inconsistencies in data, including typos and formatting issues. Now, there are a lot of ways that data can be inconsistent. This is one of the main things in data cleaning. Consistency means that the data is uniform and standardized. In clean data, similar data elements are represented in the same way across the data set. Okay. Most consistency issues are because of people. The more you allow humans to enter the data, the more likely the data is going to be inconsistent. Particularly if you don't have a system that uses data validation, such as making sure that number data is entered as numbers and things like that. So the more you allow humans to enter data and the less you have data validation, the more inconsistencies you're going to get. And that's going to result in more data cleaning to have effective data to analyze. If at all possible, apply constraints to data entry, but as discussed in Module 2, very often the analyst is not the person designing the data entry system, and very often the aspect of data validation, it's too late. So yeah. Consistency, data should be consistent in many ways. Within a column, all the data should be the same data type. If it's text data, it should be entered in it can be entered inconsistently or consistently, and that means like capitalization and spelling errors and stuff. Patterns such as phone numbers and zip codes and dates should be consistent. Units of measure should be consistent, so you shouldn't have weight in pounds and weight in kilograms. But when you enter data, you have to be careful and make sure that you're collecting it in the appropriate way. Consistency of data types is the first thing we'll talk about, and that means that within an individual data column, field, whatever you want to call it, the data type should all be the same. You shouldn't have text data and numeric data together, so you shouldn't have like 4 written as a number in one row and then 4 written as a word in the next row. It doesn't work out well that way. If it's a date field, all of the information should be in date format. If it's a text field, technically it can contain anything. So text fields are a little tricky because text fields, anything can be in there. This is an example of a consistency issue with a date field. Here we have order dates. The first 4 are all in the same format, and then somebody puts in Friday. Ideally, you'd have a system that does not allow you to enter data like this, but that's not how life works. So How to deal with that? You might just have to omit it. It's not necessarily a better thing having missing data versus inconsistent data, but it's sometimes of a trade-off because you can't determine based on this what date Friday was. It's possible that there's some way that you could go back and look up by ID and customer name and figure it out, but sometimes that's not survivable if you have tens of thousands of rows. So how you deal with data inconsistencies, sometimes you have to be a little judgmental. You can't intentionally manipulate data, but what are you going to do if you have something like this? You have to make a judgment call sometimes. Here we have something, this is data on frequency of consumption, and the people being surveyed were allowed to enter however they wanted. It's supposed to be in terms of days a week, so they enter like every day in 5 days. You would have to basically write some logic that would convert these to the number of days per week that you, in order to use this data, because you can't just go and throw away all of your data. I mean, that's part of what data cleaning is all about. You have to compromise like the data that you can't save versus trying to save and work with the data that you can. One way to diagnose consistency problems is with the frequency table, especially if it's a big data set, because then you can look at the distribution of the responses and you can figure out, where the responses that are not consistent are. And in Excel, I mean, you can just do find replace for a lot of this kind of stuff to fix it. That's what I see here. I used to do tons and tons of find replace, even with big complicated data sets, which is why to some extent, I mean, you can go jump on Python and start programming away, but realistically, a lot of the stuff you can fix in Excel. What to do with NA values? In this case, I believe the question was like, how often do you eat meat in a week? In which case NA meant that the person didn't eat meat. So in this case, you would probably just want to fill it in with a 0 or leave it blank. But this is where like understanding your data comes in, because what does an NA mean? It could be a filler value, but it could mean in this case that the question doesn't apply. So how you interpret these and how you clean these types of entries very often is determined by the context of the data. The analyst discretion. So there's different things you can do. You could actually create another variable that would be a column for like missing data or something like that. You could put a 0 in, and you could do something else depending on what your understanding of the data is. Okay. Here's another example of inconsistent numeric data. This one is kind of a nightmare. In the age column, you have ages in numbers, and then of course you have people that wrote their age in words. You think that this would be easy to fix. It's not. Again, there's only a finite number of numbers that people enter for age, so find replace wouldn't be ideal here, but you could do like conditional formatting in the numbers and then sort and then get the ones that are verbal like on top and just hand enter them to fix them, because 31, I mean, you can just type over it and type in 31. You could also do what's called a VLOOKUP table. We're going to do one of those soon in Excel. Like you could actually create a match table for the different numbers from like 1 to 100 in words and fill them in that way. But I don't know if that's really going to save a lot of time here. Here's another issue with consistency of text, and this is in a column where people entered gender, and some people entered the full word, and some people just entered F and M. And this is, again, a case of find replace could fix this. Okay. Other ways to fix text problems besides find replace, there's a lot of Excel functions that you can use. Spell check is another one. Don't overlook the fact that a lot of the entry errors might just be spelling mistakes, and a spell check can fix that. Case functions as well. You can fix uppercase, lowercase, make everything consistent. Yeah. So here's just another example of using find and replace in Excel. Spell check to the rescue. And then Excel has case functions. Sometimes you can just, like, if your data is a little messy and inconsistent, you can just convert it all to uppercase, like with state abbreviations or something. That would be a real easy one to just put in uppercase. Okay. Excel also has a lower function, and it also has this function called proper, which is kind of neat, because what proper will do is if you have a multi-word text entry, it will make it so that the first letter is capitalized of each word. Text fields are a little different because in a text field there's really no such thing as an incorrect data type, because by definition you can enter anything in a text field. Sometimes a text field is meant to be something else, so you have to be careful about that. So like for example here, these are actually column A is a text field, but somehow there's this little like I don't know exactly what this thing is called, this little punctuation mark, and these are really numbers that you want to do something with, but you can't, so you just have to get rid of the stray character. Okay. And when you move that, Excel then knows that it's numeric. This is what I was talking about earlier, which is conditional formatting can be very helpful when you're working with data type issues, and you can conditional format things and then sort them, and then in some cases there's just a small number to just manually fix. Okay. Consistency of pattern. This is the issue of things like dates, names, zip codes, phone numbers, things that you would expect to be in a certain format consistently that, of course, if you let people enter them, they probably will not be consistent. So, again, frequency tables are super helpful here. I don't really know much about like pattern test code, and there used to be something called like regular expressions, but you can write like little functions in code to determine if like a phone number is in a certain format and then fix it if it's not. Very often you can fix these types of patterns with functions. Excel has a lot of functions. We're not going to like study each function like, because you can kind of figure out, like you can go in Excel and like kind of pull up the functions and kind of just like think about like how to do things. Plus there's an almost infinite number of ways to do things. So this is something that I actually wrote. I searched on the internet how to like do something like this, and the function it's totally obnoxious, but it's like these nested substitute values, and all it's doing is stripping out the non-numeric things in here so that the result is just all the numbers. And what this is doing is column A has phone numbers in various formats, and then if you strip out all of the non-numeric stuff, you get column C. And then once you get column C, if you want, you can reformat, and then you'd have a consistent format. Dates. We're going to talk a little bit more about dates in a couple contexts, but dates are, at least from my experience, they're sort of the worst offender in terms of data consistency, because there's just so many different ways you can enter a date. So we'll talk a bit about dates in here, and analytically, whenever you have date data, it's kind of fun to work with, but it can be kind of a pain in the neck. So here's an example of date data where most of the dates are written in month, day, year, but then you have some that are written as year, day, month, year, month, day. So you want to make them consistent to work with them. You don't want to leave them like that. And again, you can sort them, and then hopefully what will happen is there's only a small number to fix, and in some cases you can just manually edit them. In other cases you can write a function to reconfigure them in the correct way. And so that's what I did here, is I reformatted it and wrote a little function that will reformat the dates in the correct way, or at least in a different way. I actually didn't do it totally the correct way, but you get the idea. So date inconsistencies, that's just part of data life. Okay. Another inconsistent issue is different countries do things in different ways. And these days it's very common to get data that's filled in by different people who live in different places. In Europe, they write dates not the same way we do in the US. So 10/2/2024, I believe, is February 10th in Europe, but it would be October 2nd here. So make sure that you know the system of dates that's being used, and that things are consistent when you're analyzing the data. Another thing that can be inconsistent is units of measure, because the US has our own weird little proprietary English system of like yards and pounds and things that like other countries probably don't even understand. But you may have data on something like height, weight, or other things where maybe somebody didn't specify units when they allowed people to enter data and they're just entered however they want. Or in this case, and this is actual data from some kind of student project where they asked for weight and people entered weight for sure, but they entered weight in all different units because kilograms and pounds, they're not consistent. So you have to write some code to make them consistent, which is not hard to do. So again, I was having some fun writing functions. So this is doing it in an automated fashion. It's just looking for, this is just stripping out the number, and then it's looking for whether it's going to be weight or kilograms or pounds, with just a little logic function. Just is this have kilograms in it? That's all this is doing. And then fixing everything to weight and pounds. You could have done it in terms of weight and kilograms, but that makes everything consistent. And now you have data in column G that you can actually analyze statistics on and stuff, because you can't do it with the data in column A as it's written. Okay. Another consistency problem that most people don't realize is the value of money. I did my doctoral dissertation, and it did have some repeated measures across several years, and I had to adjust all the data to have consistent value, because the value of $1 10 years ago is not the same as the value of $1 today. So in many cases, you want to actually adjust the monetary value so that they're consistent using the CPI index. And they have on the U.S. government website, they have a little calculator that will give you like conversion values, so that you can take like $2020 and $2024 and make them have consistent values in terms of 2020 or 2024 consistent value of $1. So that is another consistency issue. And this leads us to our exercise 7, which is on Canvas and Discuss. And what exercise 7 is it's an Excel workbook with a number of consistency issues that you need to fix for your assignment. And this concludes the part 1 video for module 3.